Welcome to Jazz Voices Live, where we're shining the light on great jazz vocalists typically, but without the jazz fan, there is no jazz vocalist. So today I am chatting with Greg Turner. And as you can see, the scrolling thing, we were supposed to have Jim Woodford on with us, but we're going to have to do that another time because of just technology is tripping. So anyway,
Anyway,
Greg,
we need to wish Jim happy birthday. He just celebrated his birthday on August the 6th.
that's right. He did. August the 6th, and he had a surprise birthday party, which I was supposed to go to. I ended up having to work.
Oh,
So I missed it. Yes. Happy birthday, Jim.
happy
It's like,
birthday,
thank
Jim.
you. All right. Well, Greg, thanks for joining me this evening.
Thank you
And
for having me.
yeah, I want to tell everybody a little bit about you. Greg is a proud non musician who describes himself as a hardcore jazz aficionado. And he was born and raised in Cincinnati. From 1989 to 2005, Greg programmed a Friday night jazz program for WVXU. And because of his programming of independent European and Japanese labels, he was asked to write CD reviews for the All Music Guide, which he did from 2000 to 2002. Since 2018, Greg has reviewed CDs for the Absolute Sound Audiophile magazine, and he's attended just about every major jazz festival, including what Chicago, Atlanta, Indianapolis, Detroit. You go to Detroit every year, though, right?
No, I go to Chicago every
Oh,
year.
Chicago every year. I knew it was one of them. You told me you go to
Yeah, I
every
flipped a
year.
coin back in 1985 and Chicago won, and it's been the one I go to ever since, even though Detroit's closer.
Yeah, it's a little closer. It's a little closer. And you've gone on several cruises, and you've also attended the North Sea Festival in Montreux in Europe. It's just you are a true jazz fan.
Got to be about the music. Somebody's got to be about it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Now, are you?
Very
Would you say
important.
you were? Would you say you're a music fan or a jazz fan?
I would say, I think most people are music fans because you hear all types of music just in your life, you know. You
Yeah.
might be some over somebody's house and you hear something on the radio. Oh, that sounds good, whatever it is, you know. But
Right.
I would consider myself primarily a jazz fan. I went through a period where I bought a lot of blues records too, you know, because I used to go to Chicago Blues Festival also. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's just one of those things that when I was a kid, I heard a lot of music in the house, a lot of different types of music, and it wasn't really categorized as such. It was just what my mother liked, you know,
Right.
jazz,
Right. Right.
R&B, blues, whatever, you know.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. And I think that's how I started listening to jazz too. Like I just like the music from the Great American Songbook.
Uh-huh.
I love that. And now that's jazz. So, but anyway, tell us about your experience at the radio station. What you did there.
That was a lot of fun, and it was very interesting how I got the gig. Ron Esposito, who was the music director at VXU, I met him at a concert. I first met him at a concert at Wittenberg University, and I want to say 1984 is when Pat Metheny had Ornette Coleman the Song
Mhm.
X tour. That's where I met him, and we talked a little bit, and we just would see each other from time to time at jazz shows in Cincinnati. And one day he told me that he needed some people because he had a couple announcers that were leaving and asked me did I have any recommendations. So I recommended myself.
He was like
I was a
me.
broadcasting major in college, so I figured, and I'm a lifelong jazz fan. I figured I'd be good at it, you know.
Isn't that something? Right. That was like your dream job, from what I understand. You always wanted to do that, but
When I
because
was
it
in college,
did,
yeah,
yeah.
when I was in college, I actually was allowed to do a jazz program on the school's radio station that went to the dorms. And I'm a graduate of Western Kentucky University, class of
Okay.
1982.
Mhm.
And I went what I did was I went to the library and got a broadcasting magazine in October of 1981, and I looked up jazz stations trying to get a job.
Right, right, right.
I found out that just about every jazz station in this country was volunteer run, or all the announcers, most of the announcers were volunteers. So
Mhm.
I had to figure out a way to make my living, and that's how I started working for the government after I got back to Cincinnati,
Okay. So luck would have
1983.
it.
You know?
Yeah. So luck would have it that he just asked you of all people to
Right.
recommend somebody. That's wonderful. So you did that for a lot of years.
Yeah, I did it for 9 years in Cincinnati, and
Mhm.
then what they did was I was on the network, what they called the X Star Radio Network, that went to a lot of smaller communities, Mount Gilead, Ohio, Manistee, Michigan, I think Maysville, Kentucky. I don't remember even every one, but that was hard because I used to go out after I did my show. I would go to a club
Mhm.
and people would ask me, "How come I can't hear you on the radio?" I had to explain that for 6 years, you know,
Oh wow.
and
Right.
that was hard to explain to people, to get them to understand. Was not
Mhm.
my decision; it was the radio station's decision.
Yeah, yeah. Did you get a lot of free tickets? And
Not necessarily free tickets. I got
no.
I
No?
mean, I did get a few situations where, like, I would go to the Blue Wisp a lot, and they would let me in. Margine knew who
Yeah.
I was and let me in,
Yeah.
but not many free tickets.
Oh,
If Xavier had something, a lot of times I did get in for free, but
yeah, right.
they just said, "Hey, your name's on the list," so to speak.
Right, right, right.
Every now and then at the Greenwich, they would let me in.
Mhm.
Now,
That's where I met you.
right,
Do you remember that? You remember
kinda.
that? Kinda?
Kinda. That was when Steve Teray and Dwayne
Yes.
Eubanks came with BJ Jansen, and they played with Eddie Brookshire and Art
Yeah.
Gore, and I cannot remember who the piano player was. And we were just sitting next to each other, you and your husband, and
Right.
I think me and my wife were there, and we just
Mhm.
had some casual conversation.
Right. I think I was humming to, So What? And 'cause I
Okay.
think they might have been playing it over the and you were like, "Oh, you're a true jazz fan." And I was like, "Well, I know a few tunes." I know a couple tunes, but yeah, yes, I remember that. And Jim was there too that night.
Oh, I didn't see him. I don't think I remember seeing him
Mhm.
that night. A
Yeah.
very interesting thing happened that night, which is one of the reasons why I've become such a jazz fan as I am. There was this lady who was sitting in the same area as I was, and she said that she knew Dwayne Eubanks' mother had
Mm.
worked with her, Miss Vera,
Mhm.
as a teacher at a school. And Dwayne was sitting at the bar, and I had seen something where she said something about it on Facebook. So I went and got Dwayne and told him that this young lady knows your mother. And you know what he did? He called her up, put her on the phone, and they talked for about
Are
10,
you
15
serious?
minutes. I am not
Wow.
kidding. That was a
Wow.
great gesture by Dwayne.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah.
But
It really
you
is.
find that jazz musicians, for the most part, are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Mhm.
A lot of them, that there are some that I talk to on Facebook that I have never even met, in person, and I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
So
there's some that I've met, but I just don't see them that much,
right.
like the Stricklands, Marcus and EJ. I saw Marcus earlier this year. Did you hear about that show from the vocalist named Andy James? It was in April.
Mm-mm. No.
Young lady named Andy James, and she's out of Las Vegas.
Okay.
She did a couple of shows, I guess, as test runs for what she was doing, and she brought Marcus Strickland. And I told Marcus, if you coming, I'm coming too.
Mhm.
And she had Terrell Stafford in her horn section, Bob Shepard, Marcus, Michael Deese, who's up in West Michigan State. He teaches trombone up there with Rodney Whitaker. And she had Bill Cunliffe, who, of course, used to be in Cincinnati. And matter of fact,
Mhm.
he was on VXU. He was one of the ones that had left at VXU. And
Okay.
of course, it was a good time to reunite with him, but also see all those other great musicians. Clarence Penn was on drums. Oh, I can't think of the bass player's name. Melvin Thomas, I think his name. He's played with Brian Blade and the Fellowship, and I saw them a long time ago. She had all these killer musicians, and to be honest, I've heard some of the CD stuff that she does, and she sound okay. But that night, she just to me wasn't hitting it really good.
Yeah, yeah.
But the musicians were so fantastic. It was a great night, and just
Yeah.
to see Marcus and Terrell. And I told a couple of people these are two of my all-time favorite musicians right here, Marcus
Mhm.
and Terrell Stafford.
Oh, okay.
I got a
All
chance to
right.
talk to them a little bit,
You
but I think
answer my questions before I ask.
okay. Well, I told you I can talk now.
Well, let's get back to it a little bit. Just a little bit. Um, what's your favorite way of listening to jazz? Do you I mean, and how much do you listen to it outside of, listening to it to write for a CD cover or something like that?
I probably do most of my listening in the car now,
Mm.
just when I'm driving in the car. Because it seems like when I'm at home, I don't like to listen as background, even though basically when you're driving, it's background music. So, and then I have one of those small, round, portable CD players, and I put the headphones on, and that's how I listen most of the time when I'm home. A lot of times I'll be listening and watching a sporting event because I'm a big sports fan too,
Oh,
and
okay.
listening that way.
Right.
I rarely go down to our family room in the lower level of our house and listen to my stereo. It's
Yeah.
very rare, because I'm usually up here watching sports on TV, baseball, football, basketball, whatever, and got the headphones on and my little CD player going.
Right. So your wife is seriously upset with you because you're watching football and listening to jazz. Like, that's
I
like,
guess you could say that because she's not a sports fan.
is she a jazz fan?
She has a very good appreciation of it. She's not like me, of course, but her
Yeah.
mother is a jazz fan. When we were dating, I brought her mother up to Jilly's. She came down to visit, and I don't remember exactly the occasion. Oh, I'm sorry. She lives mother lives in Dayton. So what it
Mhm.
was, me and my older brother came up and got her and took her to Jilly's. Mike Wade was doing a gig up there with Tim Warfield because Mike and Tim went to Howard for 2 years together, and they got to know
Okay.
each other pretty well.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and we had
Yeah.
a great time. We had a great time, and that's funny. I took her out, and of course, I took Donna's daughter, my stepdaughter, out too. So I took her
Mhm.
to a football game, and we had a good time there because she likes sports.
All right. All right. So give me three songs that get you excited. When you hear them, you're just like, yes, that's my jam. The jazz cannot do without
Speak
these
no
these
evil.
three
Speak
songs.
speak no evil and witch hunt from Speak No Evil CD by Wayne Shorter. I consider that the
Mhm.
greatest jazz recording ever made, and I get a lot of people mad when I say that because most people are kind of blue or a Love Supreme, and I
Mhm.
like those two, but Speak No Evil, pretty much anything on Speak No Evil. Um, Lee Morgan's Mr. Kenyatta,
Okay.
Search for the New Land, and John Coltrane. I always used to listen to Lonnie's Lament on my birthday, which is I don't know what Impulse record is on, but this one is from a live recording that came out after he died. It was on Pablo. I think it's called the London Sessions or something like that,
Mhm.
So Speak No Evil, Witch Hunt, those are interchangeable. Mr. Kenyatta and Lonnie's Lament by Train.
And what is so special about Speak No Evil?
Just the way it sounds. I mean, the
Just
music
it's
is
just
just so great. I've heard a lot of people play Witch Hunt. I've heard a lot of bands play Witch Hunt, but I've heard some that play it without the intro. That
mhm.
that horn fanfare, I guess you'd call
Mhm.
it. And it's like you can't if you're not gonna play the intro, don't play the song. That's the way I am.
That's where you.
And you know what? One time I was driving and I was listening, and I noticed something that Elvin Jones, the drummer, he's my goat. He's the all-time greatest musician in my opinion. My
Okay.
feeling about it. I used to go see Elvin every year from '90 to 2003, and I could probably tell you stories all day about those gigs. But anyway,
Hmm.
I heard him do something that I hadn't recognized on right before Wayne's solo on Witch Hunt, and I almost wrecked my car. And it's basically he just hits. I think he hits the snare and then hits the
Hmm.
bass drum, pop, boom, boom. And I'd
Uh-huh.
never noticed that before. You
And
know,
that's a all
hell
right.
yeah.
All right. Okay. So, um, that's who you want to hang with. If you could hang with any musician for a day, that it would be him. It would be Elvin Jones.
Well, I've kind of hung with him already, as
Okay.
much
Well,
as
he's
as
off the
much
plate.
as much as his wife, as much as Keiko would let us hang. She was
Hmm.
always very. I've heard a lot of musicians gripe about her, but she was always very nice to me. I mean, there's a couple of times I went to see Elvin and I didn't have to pay because of her. You
Uh
know.
huh. All right.
But and Elvin is the kind of person, he's so nice, and he usually is just a line of people that want to see him and speak to him. And he had a bone crushing handshake. He was strong as
Mm,
you can imagine a drummer being.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I really miss that. And of course, I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
talk to him to find out where it all came from. Of course, I know where it all came from. Came from up there.
Right.
You
Right.
know.
Right.
Matter of
Yes.
fact, I spoke at my church one time about a love supreme.
Did you?
I kind of did a little sermon on a love supreme.
All
We're
right.
going we're going through a thing where they want members to speak from time to time at our church because we don't have a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I spoke on that, Love Supreme. I read the right from the liner notes where he
Mm-hmm.
talks about all the things he talks about, thank you God, and where he talks about the music. It's very, very, very spiritual music.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's just like Billy Harper has a song called I Do Believe. And I do believe. And
Mm-hmm.
jazz is one of the reasons why I do believe, you
Isn't
know.
that something? It's funny. I was at a funeral recently, and of a jazz musician. I won't say who it was, but the person giving the eulogy said that he said that jazz was the devil's music,
Right.
and I've heard that. I've heard
I've
it.
heard that too, but
I've
never
heard
in
it
my
before.
church.
Yeah, yeah, and that really upset me. First of all, because it was a jazz musician's funeral,
Mhm.
and that was, and it's not the devil's music. I know I've heard it said before, but um, it, that just really hurt my feelings. And I'm
Well,
wondering how was it received in your church when you
here
spoke on "I Love Supreme"?
oh, it was received fine. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
there weren't many of us there because we still got a lot of people that's not coming back because of the pandemic and things like that. A
Right.
lot of older members, but a lot. One person even said, "Well, I'm familiar with the recording, but I never really thought of it that way in the way you talked
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Right. Right.
The
Right.
greatest act of a love supreme, Jesus dying
Mm-hmm.
on the cross.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Um, who's your favorite jazz vocalist?
well, it's funny you mentioned that because I want to go back to what we were just talking about the
Hmm.
devil's music.
Okay.
There was an article about Samara Joy, and I tell you what, she's young, but she's fantastic.
She's amazing.
She's got an incredible
Amazing.
voice, and she's
Yeah.
got great diction.
Mm-hmm.
But her grandfather is a gospel singer, and he basically raised her father. He basically believed and still believes, he's 90 years old, that jazz is the devil's music.
Oh,
And
wow.
father and son had to come to a truce because Samara Joy's father is like an R&B singer and bass player. He
Mhm. He has
made
an amazing voice too.
he does. You've
Oh
heard him
my
sing.
gosh.
You
Yeah.
heard him sing "The Blood Will Never Lose Its Power"
Yeah.
together. I heard
Uh-huh.
that. But
Mhm.
anyway, and they had to come to truce, and I don't think to this day that Samara Joy's grandfather has ever heard her sing,
Wow.
or seen her sing. I'm pretty sure he hadn't seen her sing because he staunchly believes that jazz is the devil's music.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, going to answer your question further, Carmen Lundy's probably my favorite vocalist right now, because she's been around and
Mhm.
I've seen Carmen turn out a jam session. She's the only
Mhm.
vocalist I've seen that ever turned it out. This was in Atlanta many years ago. And
Uh-huh.
I think she sang, I didn't know what time it was, and she sang it at a blazing tempo.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I
And
was glad to see her get a Grammy nomination for her last CD.
yeah, well,
I w
she's figured out a way to survive, even though she might be
Mhm.
in Europe most of the time. As you know, so many jazz vocalists do that. And
Right.
and going back to the older, the no longer with us vocalists, my mother really liked Sarah Vaughan a lot. I got to hear
Yeah.
Sarah a lot when I was coming up. Don't
Mhm.
be on the outside looking at. I know
Y
you've heard that song.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love Sarah.
I was literally raised on that and
Mhm.
shula bop, shoo,
Shooly
that.
bop, shooly bop, shooly bop. Yep, yep.
Oh yeah.
Shooby
I
doo
mean, I
doo.
heard those so much.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't have to listen to them because they're just in my head. I just think about them.
Right. Right, right,
But I
right.
would say out of them, and of course another one, Carmen McRae. I've got a chance to
Oh,
see Carmen. Yeah, she was
I
amazing.
love Carmen. Her
Yeah.
phrasing, she's so inventive. I just love listening to her. I
Oh
love it.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
would say Carmen, and check this out. This in Chicago Jazz Festival this year, Jasmine Horn is going to be singing on Friday night, and Carmen's going to be in singing on Saturday night. And the Thursday before Chicago, Samara Joy is going to be singing here in Cincinnati at Vivice, Cafe Vivice. So
Yeah.
3 days in a row, Samara Joy, 22, Jasmine Horn, 31, and then Carmen Lundy, I think she's about 67
Mhm. So, can I get a ride? I don't even know.
now.
I don't even know. Can I can I ride with?
uh, Now we're actually flying up.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Flying
It's
up.
not a bad drive.
It's not.
I it's not. It's really not a bad drive.
I've driven to Chicago many times, but
Yeah.
because work schedules and things like that, can't get so many days off, so we just don't fly up and fly back.
Yeah. Parking is terrible though. Like the driving once you get the
Oh yeah. I
uh,
usually just park the car at the
ugh.
hotel and Uber and Lyft,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then take
All
the
right.
train.
That sounds fun.
Oh
That
yeah.
sounds fun though. I love Chicago. We were just there a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw the pictures on Facebook.
Yeah. Okay, so how has your jazz taste evolved since you first started listening to jazz?
Wow, that's a good question. Like so many younger people, I of course I heard jazz coming up, and I think I went through a period where I thought of it as older people's music. And then what really got me going was the jazz fusion movement of the 70s. Mahavishnu Orchestra returned to
Mhm.
bands like that, Herbie Hancock.
Mhm.
I really got into that. My older brother was into the more funk oriented people like Grover Washington. But I was more into I guess the ones that had hot guitar players. I've always liked
Mm.
guitar.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I guess you could say when I went into the army and I got stationed in Frankfurt, Germany, my last year, 77, 78, I started seeing a lot of people like Archie Shepp, Pharoah Sanders, people like that over there. That's where I met Khalid Moss because he was
Mhm.
playing with Pharaoh when I met him.
Mhm.
And of course, you always connect. Where you from? Cincinnati. I'm from Dayton. We connected.
Right.
Right.
Right, right.
And
Okay.
I missed Dexter Gordon, and I did see Sonny Fortune, and then they start bringing more the so-called avant-garde groups over. In May of
Mhm.
1978, I saw Anthony Braxton, the Art Ensemble of Chicago, and Cecil Taylor.
Mhm.
Are you hip to all them all those.
Not all of them, no.
Yeah, I got to see them all, and
Uh,
it was just mind blowing. You know,
yeah.
now Braxton is a little too academic for me, but the art ensemble's theatrical thing, I really enjoyed that. And Cecil Taylor
Mhm.
was just energy. I got to sit behind the piano and while he was playing it, and the last set he played solo for about 90 minutes. You know, so you have to go
Wow.
check him out sometime. He's
Yeah.
really out there, but I swear
Mm.
that the piano levitated while he played it. So I
Mhm.
went to a
I have a
pretty.
hard time. I have a hard time. I'm really just developing an ear for straight ahead, honestly.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I'm talking more
so
about avant garde, you know.
yeah, avant-garde is way like that's
Right.
that's not something, but
But as I've
you have
gotten
to. It's an
older,
acquired taste, you know.
right, it is, and I
Yeah,
acquired it. But as I've gotten
yeah.
older, I want to hear Spangalang. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
you can write however style you want, play play it how, but play it, you know, where I can hear it and I can hear that drummer on that time. You know, that
Okay.
Spangalang is what they call it. You know,
Okay, that was my question. What are you listening for? Because I know I love the bass. I just love that.
same
And
here. That's what I hear first is
yeah,
bass and
yeah,
drums. You know.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I find myself buying a lot of music by drummer leaders, you know,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
bass leaders, you know.
Right,
It's
right.
just like two recordings that recently came out that I really love. Christian McBride's live CD and
Mhm.
Jonathan Blake's CD on Blue Note. Christian McBride's on Mack Avenue. You know,
Mhm.
and I mean, those they came out late last year, and I mean, those are two I really love. I just got a copy of Al Foster's latest
Mhm.
part of the review thing. I mean, I'll do get a few free CDs every now and then. If I really like them, a lot of times I'll buy a copy just to make sure I'm supporting the musician, or I might
Mhm.
buy it and give it to my older brother or sell it to him or something. You know?
Right. That do you just stream a lot of music, or is that
No,
that's
no,
you don't you try
I'm a
not to?
CD guy. I'm a CD guy, but I do
Okay.
go on YouTube every now and then and just put the headphones on and
Yeah.
just listen to stuff. You know?
Yeah. You must have a heck of a collection then.
I do. I've never
Mm.
counted, but I got a
Yeah.
lot.
A lot of vinyl?
I got a lot of vinyl, and it's still over my mom's house, and I'll have to
Mm.
bring it over because it's in some old like those fruit crate type deals that you used to buy
Mhm.
and put your records in, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they're pretty worn, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I
They
don't
might
really
be
want to move them.
right,
Oh, the
right. They might
albums are
be.
fine. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
crates,
Oh, okay. All right. All
you
right.
know. And I got kind of bad knees, so I don't know if I can be carrying all that
Yeah.
heavy music, you know. So I'll
Yeah.
figure
If
out
you're
some
not gonna
way to get
listen
it over
to it, you know, if you don't appreciate the listening to it on vinyl, you might as well just leave it there and let it get some value because you could sell it and you know it's gonna be worth something.
there. Yeah, but
One day. One day.
my taste really runs. I love original compositions. You know, that's
Mhm.
probably why I like Speak No Evil so much. That music
Mhm.
is so original, and
Mhm.
just wasn't anything that I heard that sounded like it. You know, and Wayne did not. One thing I like, he didn't play a whole lot of notes, even though I went through a period where I like hearing lots of notes. But
Mhm.
Wayne back then told a story on his horn.
Mhm.
I felt like I didn't need a translator. I understood the story right there.
That kind of leads into my next question. eh, what advice, or no, not what advice, but what albums would you recommend for a new jazz listener, somebody who's just starting to listen and wants to get their feet wet, but you know, what would you recommend?
Well, you know, I used to buy extra copies of Speak No Evil and give them to people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so
You
that one
recommend
right
just
there.
Speak No Evil for
You know,
sure.
yeah, if you can listen to this, you know, I can get you into some other stuff. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
mean, Blue Note just can't really go wrong with it. Back in the 50s and 60s, mostly the 60s Blue Note.
Right.
It's just there. I mean, I used to go to my uncle's houses for the stuff we didn't have at our home, and I had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of uncles that they liked Jimmy Smith, you know, the organ,
Mm-hmm.
and of
Mm-hmm.
course, so many of them liked Lee Morgan, you know, and
Right.
my one uncle
Right.
had some that I had never even seen, and I had to check them out. Babyface Willette on the organ, and my brother got in the Stanley Turrentine later, but and of
Mhm.
course playing with Jimmy Smith, but
Mhm.
some of the stuff he did on Blue Note, we hadn't heard. A lot of people was just pretty much Horace Silver, Jimmy
Mhm.
Smith on Blue Note,
Mhm.
Cannonball Adderley on whatever label he was on, and Miles Davis whatever label he was on. That's
Mhm.
what a lot of people that I came up listening
Right. Right. Okay. So what's the best performance you've ever seen live? Just blew your mind.
to. I've seen so many. I mean, so many in Chicago, but one in particular that I like to tell people about is at the North Sea Jazz Festival in 1992. I saw Courtney Pine play, and after that show, I had to take the train back to my hotel in a little town called Delft because back then the the North Sea Jazz Festival was in Den Haag or The Hague, the capital city. It's in Rotterdam now.
Mhm.
But anyway, they played, I want to say, four tunes in about 2 hours. They really stretched it out. When I
Yeah.
came in, they were playing Afro Blue by Mongo Santa Maria. Of course, a lot of people think Train wrote it, but Mongo wrote it. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, Courtney was on the soprano saxophone going crazy, and it was just like. And then they played a Julian Joseph tune, The Language of Truth, which is amazing. And Julian Joseph was on piano. It was Julian
Mm.
Joseph, Courtney Pine, Julian Joseph on piano. Wayne Batchelor, I think the guys was on bass, and Mark Mondesser on drums. They're all British, you know. And I saw Julian many years ago. He came to Cincinnati and played with Branford when he was at Berklee College of Music.
Mhm.
So I was very familiar with him. And after they played The Language of Truth, they played Body and Soul. How about that? And then they ended the show on My Little Suede Shoes by Charlie Parker.
Mhm.
And
So
they just
4 songs in 2
man, it
hours.
was about that long. Yeah, they ripped the place apart.
You
And
remember it from
that's probably
1992
that's probably the only night in my life that I didn't go to sleep. I was so wound up, and
after that.
I had to walk from the train station to my hotel. And I think I stayed up I mean, I got back to the hotel probably about 3 in the morning, and I think I just stayed up all night. That was just amazing.
Mhm. So where do you think jazz is headed?
It's hard to tell because one of the things that kind of upsets me in some ways, I feel like it's getting to where there are people who don't think people or don't know that people like me exist, meaning non-musicians who love the music. Of course, I'm
Mhm.
an old man now, but I've been in this game for a long time, and I'm not gonna give it up that easily. It's like academized, whatever the proper word is.
Mhm.
You have to be a player to understand what's going on. But I've never felt that way. I mean, it hits you right here.
Right, right.
It hits you right here.
You shouldn't have to be a player
I
to
think there's a lot of
understand it.
people that are coming up that feel you
Huh.
have to be a player, and I'm just gonna support the people that I enjoy. And I mean, I enjoy so many. I don't really have best or favorites,
Mhm.
like that. It's just if you make something good and I get a hold of it and I hear it, I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna
Mhm.
dig it. It's just like I was checking out one that I'm reviewing by a guy who I'd never heard of named Todd Marcus. He lives in Baltimore, and he
Mhm.
doesn't travel the world playing music. He basically stays pretty much in Baltimore, and he plays nothing but bass clarinet.
Hmm. Okay.
Nothing but bass clarinet. And most of us are familiar with people like Eric Dolphy, one of his instruments, David Murray, one of his instruments,
Mhm.
and there are others out there that played that instrument. But those two automatically come to my mind first. But that's all this guy plays. And he
Okay.
did a record. He did a record that was inspired by Egypt. His father's Egyptian, and he made some trips over to Egypt to visit his family. And I think he got a
Mhm.
chance to play a little music over there. And I mean, it's some really serious writing. It's a nine piece, and it sounds much larger. And
Mm.
like I said, wasn't familiar with the guy, but somebody sent
What's his name again?
Todd Marcus.
Okay, Todd
Yeah,
Marcus.
he's a community organizer and community activist also. He runs a nonprofit in Baltimore that deals with hunger and things like that. He's a very interesting guy, from what
Mhm.
I've read about him.
Yeah, I have to check him out.
Yeah, there's always
Okay.
people. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you go to YouTube, you just check "In the Valley," and you'll find some
Mhm.
things. And they sent me another CD that he did where one of my all-time favorite musicians who just passed, Ralph Peterson Jr., plays drums on it. So
Mhm.
if he played with Ralph, he's all right with me. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, Ralph is one of my all-time favorites. Put that foot right in your butt.
Yeah.
From the drum set.
I was naively, I was so naive to believe that only the greatest jazz musicians lived in New York or in, big cities. But that's not true.
That's not
Chicago, it's really not true. They're all over the place. And even
Chicago.
here, yeah, yeah, right here in Cincinnati and in Dayton, great
Chicago
musicians.
has a
Yeah.
ton of musicians that
Mhm.
people have never heard of that very rarely played outside of Chicago. For
Yeah.
various reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, our 30 minutes is up. We're a
Just
little
30
past
minutes.
30 minutes. Well, I try to keep it down. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But what would I mean, you are an advocate of jazz. You are not just a fan. You actually use your free time to promote the genre. And what inspires you to do that other than, just your love for the music, but what inspires you?
That's really it right
That's
there.
it.
Now, I have come close to doing, some booking and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, I've been involved with Al Williams and the Lost Society. I don't know if he's going to get back, but I'm pretty sure he will. And He used to have concerts in his apartment building where he lived.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
now I think the apartment was sold to UC. It's in that UC area, and I think he's
Okay.
had to move, so he's had to find some other places. But I've always been one that I emceed his shows, and when we got out of town musicians, I'm the one who got them put in their hotels and things like that. So
Okay.
I've always had that involvement like that with Al for a long time,
Mhm.
we've had people come down from Dayton for the shows. Um, One of the first shows he did with a so-called out-of-town musician, he got Khalid Moss to bring Gary Bartz down and
Mhm.
played with. I don't remember the drummer. I think the bass player was Al Jackson. He brought Khalid brought Dayton musicians to play,
Okay.
and Gary Bartz. And
Right.
that was a great time. And Al's taste probably run more so-called avant-garde, but I'm pretty sure he can listen to anything that just has fire in it and energy.
Mhm.
Anything up tempo, he loves it.
Yeah.
That hard spang-a-lang.
Spang-a-lang. You
Yeah.
have increased my jazz vocabulary.
Oh yeah. That's drummer talk.
Spang-a-lang. That's drummer talk.
That's
Okay.
drummer talk. Yeah. You ask
All
Ishmael
right.
about it, he'll know.
Ishmael, I'll have to ask him. I'll have to ask him. All right, Greg. I really appreciate you spending time. How's your deck, by the way? The last time we were supposed to meet, the tree fell
Right.
on your deck.
Oh yeah. The roof has been fixed,
Oh
but
my
the deck,
gosh.
a matter of fact, I just had a contractor over. I'm waiting for his bid. He came over
Mhm.
Saturday and took a look. Uh,
Mhm.
the roofer was supposed to fix the deck also, but he started talking about the lower deck, what it needed, and we basically are probably going to just get that lower deck removed because
Oh.
we got a really big deck. It's just too much for us old
Mhm.
folks to take care of.
Oh, all right. All right.
And he had some guys that they hammered steps in, to
Mhm.
replace the ones that got busted, but we're not in code. So we're
Ah,
trying to get somebody to do it in code. And at this point, just tell us how much it's going to cost. We'll send the information to the insurance company and see
right.
if they can give us a little bit more, because it's my understanding insurance companies usually kind of lowball you when they do
Mhm.
that.
Mm.
When they
Yeah.
come out and look at all the damage that's done, they
Yeah.
lowball you. And
Well, I'm
he
glad nobody was hurt because
right.
that could have been terrible. That could have just been so. Anyway, and we finally got a chance to chat. I'm so glad about that. I
Well,
appreciate you. I
I
really
appreciate you
appreciate
having
you.
me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I learn about so many musicians when I read your Facebook posts.
Did you
So
see my latest post?
I
Nicholas
don't
Payton?
know what are you talking
Yeah.
about.
Nicholas,
Oh,
it was this
I didn't
Saturday.
see it.
Yeah, you need to check that
Oh,
out. That was a big
yeah.
surprise because that festival that he came to is called Jazz in the Park, and it's in the
Hmm.
suburb of Forest Park, and it's usually a smooth jazz festival. They have
Oh,
smooth
okay.
jazz groups, local smooth jazz groups, and they might get a couple of out of town people. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, Nicholas Payton's coming here, so I have got to go check that out. Now,
yeah.
Nicholas Payton is doing a thing where he sits at the electric piano, plays the electric piano. He did have an upright bass player and a drummer, and he plays the electric piano. He'll play the melody, then he'll play the first solo electric piano, then he picks the trumpet up and plays it, and still sits.
Mm,
I mean,
mm.
I heard some people say I could hear the talent, I could see the talent in this guy, but
Yeah.
to me, it was kind of monotonous. Then he
Really?
played, oh yeah, and he was
Huh.
trying to do more funk grooves and things like that, medium tempo
Yeah.
stuff. And then he
Oh,
played Wayne Shorter's Pinocchio, and then they burned the place up on that.
okay. All right.
But
Uh,
it was still the same thing. He started on the
mhm.
piano,
And then
and
picked up the trumpet.
yeah, I wish he would
Mm,
have just played the trumpet, because
mhm.
he's one of the best trumpet players on the planet, as we all know.
Mhm. Well, I don't know, but I will keep following you for sure. And you got to come back and tell us how the Chicago festival goes, how your trip goes. Yeah. All right.
Well,
All right.
Jim has graciously allowed me to write reviews for. Well, of course, it was Ron Gable first, and then
Yes.
took over, and I get a photo credential from them through them, and
Mhm.
I have to hustle to get my wife one, and I'll get her one too. So we'll take
Uh-huh.
a lot of pictures down there, and I'll eventually write something after I look at my pictures. I'll try to write around the best pictures that I took.
Oh, definitely. Okay. Okay. And this interview will be on jazzvoices.org, and I'll have your bio and everything up there. So
Oh,
it'll
okay.
be in there for a while.
I had forgotten that I sent you all that information.
Uh-huh. You sent me
Um,
everything. So I appreciate you spending this time with me.
yeah.
I'm always learning. I'm always learning good stuff from you.
Oh, well,
So
I'm
I
glad to
appreciate
hear
it.
I
I
can teach
appreciate it.
somebody.
Yeah. We got to keep it going. We got to keep the jazz alive,
Oh yeah,
you know.
and
So
make
this is
sure
one
we
way we
have
can do
people
that.
to understand that anybody can like the music.
Anybody.
You don't have to be a musician in school.
Right. That's so true. You don't, because I love it. I love it. So I want to thank you one more time. And everybody can follow Greg on Facebook, right? Well,
Yes, ma'am.
they'd
I'm
have
there.
to be your friend. Yeah.
Right,
You have to accept them as a friend. But he
right.
has lots of good information about jazz. So we want you to follow him. And come on over to jazzvoices.org and watch them. I have several interviews on my website. So you can see those too, along with this one again, and you can
Yeah.
share it as well. Okay.
One of them, you got Laura Gentry. I saw
I have,
parts of
yeah.
that. Yeah, Laura Gentry got into the music from being around me and my brother and Al and another friend.
Oh, really?
We called ourselves the Jazz Mafia. You
Yeah,
know,
she's doing a lot. You
she's
guys are
doing a
about,
lot.
oh, yeah,
She's
she's
doing a
doing a
lot.
lot for
Oh
jazz
yeah,
in Cincinnati.
she's
Yeah,
doing a
I have
lot.
to talk to her
Oh yeah,
for sure.
she'll
All right.
acknowledge
Hmm? She what?
she'll acknowledge me. She
Oh,
knows
I'm
who I
sure. Oh, I'm sure she does. I'm sure she does. She came down for the last jazz series we had here at
am.
Holy Grounds.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
to see Brandon Scott Coleman trio.
right.
Yeah, so she was down for that. So I did get a chance to meet her. So
Yeah,
Franz
Brandon
Braxton.
opened. They played the group that he had. They played before Nicholas Payton.
I
Yeah,
remember him telling, yeah, yeah.
but he kept
Fran,
calling
I
him
dig it.
Nick Payton. I've never heard anybody call him Nick. Not even New Orleans people. He's always Nicholas.
Uh-huh. Huh. Okay. Well, maybe they're
Yeah,
tight. They're tight like that.
maybe that's a musician thing.
That's they're
Yeah,
tight
hey
like
Nick.
that. You don't get that. Well, tell your wife I said hello.
All right.
And thanks again for coming on Jazz Voices Live. And for everybody listening, you can also tune into Jazz Voices on WDPS 89.5, Dayton's home for jazz. I have a jazz show on Fridays at 1 o'clock. Jim Woodford is on Wednesdays from 1 to 2, 12 to 1. He's bebop and more. So my show is all about jazz vocals. But today we're talking to one of the premier jazz fans, Greg Turner. So thanks once again. And
Thank you.
we'll talk to you soon. All right. Take care.
All right. Okay.
All right. All right.
We got it
Bye.
done.
Got it done.
Okay. The
Okay.
dog